Hello, everybody. Yeah, so to remove any confusion, because I've had some questions about this. So I'll be speaking from 1 to 3. You are not going to have to listen to me for 2 hours straight, I promise. Y'all are brave for coming to a 2-hour session. I will do like a 10-minute break here in like 45 minutes or an hour so people can get up, walk around, get some water, and then we'll finish up the session. And then at 3 o'clock to 4:30, there is a part 2 of this. It's continuation. So just to give you an idea, this part 1 will be focused more on business principles and kind of mindset shift. And then part 2 will be a lot more focused on the grazing piece, but it's all going to come together. So, okay. So for those of y'all who don't know who I am, which is most of y'all, I think, my name is Caitlin Word. I work at Noble Research Institute in Ardmore, Oklahoma, which is South Central Oklahoma. So a far cry from where I'm at right now. This is my first foray to the East Coast. So it's cold up here. We've been cold down there too, though, to be fair. A little bit of background. I actually grew up on large cow-calf ranches in deep West Texas and Southeast New Mexico, so desert country. I moved to Oklahoma, and I thought that was east, so that gives you a little bit of context there. Grew up on big country out there. The ranch that my dad ran for 25 years was 130,000 acres. So, and on that, we ran about 2,000 head of cattle max capacity. So that gives you an idea of my context, a lot different than y'all's, right? Moved to Oklahoma to work for Noble as a ruminant nutritionist. So I have a master's in ruminant nutrition. Fell in love with the grazing stuff and found some mentors in the grazing industry. Really fell in love with that. Started doing a lot of that at Noble and did a quick foray with Ranching for Profit. There's some alumni in this room. If you've been to Ranching for Profit, you raise your hand. Okay, y'all have to be quiet when I ask questions. And no whispering to people and giving them answers, all right? So I taught the Ranching for Profit school for 1.5 years, which was the coolest thing of my life. If you're not familiar with that, there will be a lot of that curriculum in here. So Noble has partnered with Ranching for Profit to garner some of their curriculum. So you will see the Ranching for Profit logo on here, the Ranch Management Consultant logo on here. This will be kind of a crossover between the two, right? But I taught that for 1.5 years, and now I'm back at Noble doing this. And the reason why I'm here is I spent time at Noble, and our focus, and I'll get into that in a minute, is regenerative ranching, regenerative grazing, and soil health. And, you know, no pun intended, that's a super noble cause, and I love it. I'm very passionate about it. I went to work at Ranching for Profit because I thought it was the single most impactful piece of education for ranchers and farmers that I'd ever been a part of. And they really hone in on the business piece, and I thought that was amazing. And I think as an industry in farming and ranching and agriculture in general, we have not done a very good job of tying those two together. I think we love to talk about regenerative, and we love to talk about the soil, and we love to talk about grass. And then there's some of us who really like to talk about the business stuff, but we don't do a good job of talking about how those intersect and how they complement each other. So hopefully I'm going to demystify that a little bit today. So Noble is the nation's largest ARO, all right? So we are an ag research organization. We have been around since 1945, so over 80 years. We do research, education, consultation, mentorship, philanthropic. We've got lots of different arms, lots of things going on. We operate on about 13,500 acres in South Central Oklahoma across 5 ranches. You will see a lot of pictures of cows in here. Do not let that deter you. We traditionally were just a conventional cow operation. In 2020, we made the switch to regenerative ranching. Okay, so we were conventional. We hayed, we sprayed, we fertilized, and we cold turkeyed all of that in 2020. So I'll talk a little bit about that transition, mostly in the second session. So now our focus is, well, this is our founder, Lloyd Noble. So we'll talk about him a little bit. There were some really, really great quotes from Lloyd Noble, but he founded this organization because during the Dust Bowl, he was a pilot, and he was flying over the Southern Great Plains, and he saw the Dust Bowl happening from the air. And he recognized what was happening and recognized that there was a need for soil education. So he founded the Noble Foundation for the purpose of educating farmers and ranchers on soil health practices. So that is our roots. And in 2020, we decided to return to those in a more solid fashion, a more solid form, and pursue this regenerative agriculture, regenerative ranching, soil health. And that is our entire mission. So this is what we're here for. Noble's mission is to guide farmers and ranchers in applying regenerative principles that yield healthier soil, more productive grazing land, and business success. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. This next part's going to be familiar to some ranching for profit people. All right, so, but what I want to do is I just want us to let's all get on the same page and kind of get our minds right, because what we're going to be talking about today, you probably haven't experienced or seen somewhere else before. So I'm going to have a little bit of interaction in this room. If that makes you nervous, don't worry, I won't call you out. But we're going to be in here for a couple of hours, so let's try to loosen up and get to know each other a little bit. So I have a little exercise here. There are some letters that are going to appear on the screen, okay? And I want you to tell me which one seems the most different to you, okay? So we all know the English alphabet. Some letters up here, okay? Take a minute to think about it. Which letter looks the most different to you? Let's do a show of hands. Who thinks it's B? One person, okay. Who thinks it's C? Ooh, okay. All right, there'll be questions. Who thinks it's D? Colin's not voting. Who thinks it's Q? Okay. All right, who thinks it's T? Nobody? You've been. Why didn't anyone vote for the T? You already voted for C?
It's so different you didn't even see it.
It's so different you didn't even see it? Sometimes I didn't even know it was an option. I often get you tricked me.
That is true.
Did I trick you?
Yeah.
How did I trick you? I said there's some letters up here. Which one's most different?
It's not really a letter, it's more of a cross. So now
Do you know how to write, Troy? Your name starts with it.
it's a plus sign. Oh, in my defense, because I'm sitting here, I didn't see the bottom part.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay,
Excuses.
all right.
Excuses.
Yeah.
Why didn't you see the T as a letter?
It looks like quadrants.
Yeah, so your brain and your experiences have led you to believe that was a way to dissect the data. All of our science nerdy brains in here saw that, we're like, oh, we're going to dissect some data, right?
You said you're going to put some letters up after you already put the cross up.
Okay, so so the reason why came up at a different time. What are some reasons to have voted for the T? Now that you see it. It's bigger, right?
It's blue.
It's a different color.
Kind of seemed like you were going to try and trick us.
Do what? Say it again.
Oh, it kind of seemed like you were going to try and trick us.
It seems like I was going to try and trick you. I didn't trick you, though. Your brain's telling you that, okay? Okay. Now that you see it, is it really obvious?
Yeah.
So this is something that they use in the Ranching for Profit School, and I love Jordan Steele always says, anybody in here have small kids, like 3, 4, 5 years old, kindergarten age? If you go home and do this with your kid, they'll see the T. They haven't been conditioned to see this as an axis or a dissection of data. They just, right? We all have these things in our life. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You're saying I tricked you, but it's right there, plain as day. It's bigger than all the other ones, right? We know what a T looks like, but you thought it was a way to dissect the data. Do you think there's some T's in your business or in your ranch, at your farm, things that are staring you right in the face that you're just so used to seeing that you don't even recognize them? So let's explore that a little bit. This could be maybe a little bit of a pivot, but you'll see where I'm going with it. Regeneration is a hot term, is a hot topic, right? It's a word that we all hear all the time. It's in the title of the mission of the organization that I work for, right? I love this. What is regeneration or regenerative? Anybody want to? There's not a wrong answer here, just so you know. I'm just curious. What do y'all think it is?
Giving back as much as you take.
Giving back as much as you take. I like that.
More than.
More than? Okay. That sounded like I can go up somewhere.
I can say more than as well.
More than what?
So it's not just like stasis, it's like, and it's like additional.
Additive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's bringing back something that was lost.
Bringing back something that was lost. I think that's a good one. Yes. That's exactly what you were going to say? Okay.
Bettering while you go.
Bettering what?
While you go.
Bettering while you go. Yeah, doing better all the time. There's a million definitions of this, and this is something that we get a lot whenever I go out and give talks, is that everybody has a different definition of what regenerative is and what regeneration is, especially when it comes to regenerative grazing, right? Regenerative soil health, principles and practices. Everyone has a different idea of what that looks like. If you Google this, just so you know, which I did, if you Google this, these are some things that come up. This is actually off of Noble's website. I know you can't read this, so I'll just read pieces of it. But at its core, regenerative agriculture is the process of restoring degraded soils using management practices based on ecological principles. All right, that's our. And by the way, I just Googled regenerative when I did this, and regenerative agriculture came up. This is a quote from Alan Williams, with Understanding Ag. Regenerative grazing is a manner that allows us to be able to tap into the 4 ecosystem processes to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore ecosystem function. Lots of R words. Probably saying the same thing. This is off of, I think, Webster. To recreate, reconstitute, or make over in a better form or condition. This is all just different ways of saying what you all just said, right? I would think so. And this one is another one of the dictionaries online, but I really like this one. To improve a place or system, especially by making it more active or successful. I really, really like that. And the reason why, and you guys didn't do this, which is interesting. Most places I go and I ask someone to define regeneration or regenerative, we tend to associate that term with soil or ecology, right? Land, and rightfully so, because we have degraded our rangelands. My organization's mission is to restore degraded rangelands. That's what we do. And there's obviously a need for it. I think most people in this room would agree to that and are pretty passionate about it. But I like this piece of it, a system. A system. Is your farm or your ranch or your dairy just the ecology and the soil? It's the part we've probably forgotten about the most. Would you agree with that? But there's a lot of pieces there. So to improve a place or system, so if we're going to talk about regeneration and regenerative, we have to be regenerating the soil, right? And the forage and the diversity. What other parts of our business do we have to regenerate? The next generation?
Ourselves.
Yourselves?
Our moods.
I'm hearing a lot of people stuff. Our moods, our attitudes, our people, our successors.
Bank account.
Bank account. It's a big one. Yeah. No one likes to talk about that. Right? Okay. This is Noble's definition of regenerative ranching, right? This is the process of restoring degraded grazing lands. This is, ranching specific. Again, we're in southern Oklahoma, but you could just say regenerative farming, regenerative whatever, right? We are restoring degraded lands using practices based on principles. I want you to keep that in mind. The practices that are based on principles, that'll be a theme going through here. The cool thing about regenerative agriculture and the soil health kind of conversations and community is that we've come up with these principles and these things that we can dial back to and point to, right? So with regenerative ag, there's the 4 ecosystem processes: the water cycle, the energy cycle, the nutrient cycle, community dynamics. These are all of the things that our ecosystems use to function. The 6 principles of soil health. Most of y'all are probably familiar with this. Understanding Ag coined these. These are the principles that we can come back to. And for those of y'all who aren't familiar with the 6 soil health principles, this is the Bible for us at Noble whenever it comes to our pastures and into our grazing systems. Anything that we do, we can come back to these principles and check ourselves and see, are we moving in the right direction? Because I'm in South Central Oklahoma. Not right now. Right now I'm in Manchester, New Hampshire, right? Is the way that I would apply these in South Central Oklahoma the same way that I'm going to apply them in Manchester? No, they're way different. I can't tell you how many times I go somewhere and they say, oh, that's all good and well where you live. That won't work here. And I say that as someone from New Mexico, where we get 7 inches of rain on a good year, and where we have literally gone 2.5 years before without a single drop of rain. Extreme drought, 6 miles between waters. I take this stuff back to New Mexico. They think I'm crazy, right? That won't work here because of this piece. That principle, know your context, right? All of these have to be applied within your context, and they'll look different everywhere. These are the principles. The practices will look different everywhere. They look different for you than they look for me, but the principles apply everywhere. So I love this piece because that is true for all the things that y'all mentioned, the people part, the finance part, and the soil part, right? We're tracking there? Okay. So the founder of Ranching for Profit, I don't know if most of y'all are familiar. Everyone know who Alan Savory is, right? Most people know who Alan Savory was. Anyone know who Stan Parsons was? There's a couple people in the Ranching for Profit people. Stan Parsons and Alan Savory came over together, all right? And they really had a joint venture to begin with, but those Rhodesians are hotheads, and they parted ways after a few years. And they had similar ideas and similar ideologies, but different opinions of how to do it. And so Alan Savory started the Savory Institute. Stan Parsons founded Ranching for Profit. And Ranching for Profit over time became a business school, right? And Stan used to say that whenever he was over in Rhodesia, in the bush, the natives always cooked all of their meals in these really big three-legged pots out in the bush. That's how they cooked all their food. Why do you think it had 3 legs? Not 4.
Doesn't tip over.
So it wouldn't tip over? Yeah, they're sturdier.
Sits on uneven ground.
Sits on uneven ground. Yeah, really steady on uneven ground instead of, what happens if you have a 4-legged stool on uneven ground?
One of the legs as well as on.
Yeah, it wobbles, it'll tip over, dinner's on the ground, right? Stan said that our businesses, and what you do is a business. I think we tend to think of it as a lifestyle more than anything, that it is a business, right? This is how we put food on the table. This is how we provide for our families, okay? Our businesses are like a 3-legged pot, and they have 3 legs too. I asked you earlier, what are some considerations? What are the things we have to balance in regeneration? So what do you think these legs are? They're very basic. People's, okay, hold that thought.
People, soil, and livestock.
People, soil, and livestock. So soil, the land. Okay, the first thing that we need if we're going to be ranching or farming or doing anything, we got to have land to put them on, right? Okay, so land's one of them. Livestock is one of them. Okay, people, land, livestock. I'm not hearing one important one. Finance, money. We got to have money to do this, right? Money, land, and livestock. Now you mentioned people. Well, I'm out of legs. So do they go with money? Do they go with land? I hope they don't go with livestock. That's probably an HR violation.
They're in the pot.
They're in the pot. There's our guy in the pot. We'll make him Oklahoma. Okay. So here's our guy in the pot. Why are the people in the pot and not a leg? Because they're decision making. Ooh, they're being held up by the legs. They're dependent.
They're in hot water.
Valid, right?
Yeah.
For those online, she said they're the ones in the hot water. Yeah. What happens if one of these legs gets out of balance? Who falls out? What's usually under one of these big pots? A big fire. Yeah. The significance of the people being in the pot is it your job to support your business, or is it your business's job to support you? Your business should support you. The purpose of the business is support the people, right? It takes you to run it. I'll give you that, right? It takes you to run it. You have to be a part of it. But the business should be supporting the people. If you are supporting the business, is it really a business, or is it just a job? And you can't get out of. You feel stuck, maybe? Yeah, because you're a leg, and if you leave, it all tips over. Food for thought. But I would say in the regenerative circles, and sometimes at Noble we have in the past gotten really focused. I would say, again, we ran conventionally for decades and decades and decades. We were really, really focused on this piece and this piece. The land and well, I say the land we were focused on, and the money and the livestock, maybe. We were not focused on this, and we certainly didn't keep everything in balance. Which leg do you think is the shortest for you? Does anyone have a short leg? It's a funny leg.
It's the money leg.
It's the money leg's your short leg? Land leg is your short leg. Your soil health is not great?
There's just not enough around.
Just can't find enough land.
I have 3 equally short.
He's got a little squat
I'm
pot.
in balance, but they're all,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little squat pot. Anybody feel your pot teetering throughout the year sometimes? Yeah. I think it's so important that we keep this in mind when we're talking about regenerative, when we're talking about soil health. And I'm gonna go through this today. Thank God I've got a lot of time because this is, you know, a long introduction. But the point is, regenerating the land and regenerating your business and having a healthy business that has cash flow and supports the people in it are not mutually exclusive things. But one does not causate the other, right? Just because you're regenerative and doing regenerative things and doing grazing and you want to maybe do direct to consumer and you're doing all the right things by your animals and by your land does not mean you're going to be profitable. If you've been told that, that's probably a lie you've been sold, and you might be reaping the consequences of that. Should they intersect and should they drive each other? Absolutely. Can they? Yes. We're going to talk about that. These are just some thoughts I have about this within kind of the soil health regenerative mindset. Soil health focus does not guarantee financial or economic benefit. Doesn't guarantee it. You have to make sure that happens. That's your responsibility. If you marry ecological efficiency to your production practices, you can reduce a lot of friction. That's something we have segregated those astronomically. And the more we can marry those, the more smooth this goes. And if you can make Mother Nature your business partner, it's the best thing you can do. I don't know how many years you've spent doing it, but as an industry, we've spent decades fighting Mother Nature. We'll talk about that some too. Can you think of an example of that? Fighting Mother Nature?
Out of season calving or lambing.
Out of season calving or lambing.
Getting rid of all the weeds in your pasture.
Predation. For those online, getting rid of all the weeds in your pasture.
Make milk in January.
Do what?
Trying to make milk in
Trying to
January.
make milk in January. This is so interesting because these are all, I showed you guys the tea, right? That's an example of, have y'all heard the word paradigm before? You know what a paradigm is? What is a paradigm? Someone give me a definition. There's no wrong answer.
Sort of a set of fundamental understandings.
Set of fundamental understandings. RFP people, you can speak now. Colin, what would you say a paradigm is?
A preconceived set of notions.
Ooh, preconceived set of notions. I'm trying to think who says it. It's the lens through which you see the world, right? It's built by our experiences and who we are and everything that's happened to us and everything we've experienced. We all have them. Everything that y'all just listed are paradigms within the industry. We got to try to make milk in January. We got to calve in February. I got to get rid of all these weeds. My cows won't eat them. Those are big giant T's in some people's businesses, right? And they might be in yours. Yeah, making Mother Nature your business partner is a different way of thinking, and alleviating that friction will help you go a long way. Here's another just kind of analogy that I like to think of. On the beach, you know, closest beach to me is Galveston, Texas. I know, it's an abomination. Okay, I get it. All right, but when you go down there, they've got these houses up on stilts. And I was just looking for a picture of this because I was giving a presentation talking about adapting livestock and how we have propped up an unsustainable level of productivity in our businesses and our animals for a really long time. And this is a really good example of that, is our businesses and our livestock and our land in a lot of ways are a lot like these houses. We have propped them up on all these stilts, and it takes these stilts to keep them up. What are the stilts protecting the house from?
Flooding.
Flooding, the water, the waves. What's our flooding? What's our water and waves?
Drought.
Think like business. Think like, what are the things attacking you in farming, in dairy, in ranching? Costs, inflation, market.
Changing of consumer preferences.
Okay, consumer preferences, market. What about the weather?
Food policies.
Yeah, regulations. Yeah.
Climate change.
Okay, so we're trying to protect ourselves from all these things. So what do? We prop our businesses up, we prop our livestock up on these stilts to try and protect them. It's well intended, is my point, right? It's well intended. We have these good intentions. But what happens whenever all those things start battering against the stuff that we've propped our businesses up with? Whenever the wave comes up and a hurricane comes in and starts beating against those stilts, the weather gets real bad, the regulations are against us, we've got a drought, we've got flooding, we've got God knows how much snow and ice outside. Okay, All these things outside of our control, those stilts come down. What else comes down? Our business. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to the livestock market recently, but there's a lot of things happening there. There are a lot of stilts that are going to come out from underneath a lot of houses in the next year or so. How do we protect ourselves from that? This is, and I can read this to you guys if you can't read it. I thought this was, I just was looking for a picture of a stilted house, and this came up. It was just an article about this house. It said these things are totally bizarre. Mansions jacked up in the air on stilts to get above the flood lines. They used to be real vernacular of houses built on stilts in the South, but they tended to be light and small. Now they are just ridiculous things. Yes?
A good example, actually referring back to Calvin, are you familiar with artists? He drew the last 5,000. If you're familiar with that.
I don't think so.
Charlie Russell.
Oh, yes.
Look at his painting, look at the story behind that. It's something. You might want to use that as a slideshow.
Oh, yeah. Probably the same thing I'm talking about.
Very much so.
I thought this was so interesting. They used to be light and small. Like they had a purpose. We did it for a reason. And now they're just these gargantuan houses that you have to prop up. Right? A ton of overheads, a ton of a big business that we are just working and trying to prop up over time. Right? And it's a lot of work for probably not very much return. So this is, I'm just trying to kind of set the stage here, get our mind right, kind of what's happened in the industry, and kind of how this happened. Now, again, this talk is all about the intersection of regeneration and profitability. So we're about to get to that. What effect does regenerative management have on profit in your mind? What have you experienced? What have you heard? What do you think?
Builds resilience.
It builds resilience. So you think it builds resilience profit? Okay.
Builds resilience in your ecology of your farm.
In your ecology. But what effect does it have on profit?
It should increase it, because if you've been fighting Mother Nature and you change and start working with the principles, you should be able to.
It should increase it.
Should
Should increase it.
Should, by the same logic, decrease expenses in the form of inputs.
Should decrease expenses in the form of inputs. Are costs and inputs the major determining factor of profit?
They're
A major determining factor?
Yes.
takes a little while to.
I'm just curious what y'all think.
Regenerative management protects it from loss.
Protects it from loss, so creates resiliency. Okay. So let's kind of look at this from a livestock perspective. This is the Grazing and Livestock Conference, and my forte is livestock. So, and you'll have to forgive me if I know a lot of people in here have small ruminants, and a lot of these will be maybe kind of cattle oriented, but you can kind of readjust and try to make this fit your context. The attraction for a lot of people to regenerative management within the livestock industry, I think, is the reduction of inputs, right? The reduction of costs, right? We have all these costs, we have these stilts, and we want to reduce them. We want to spend less money. So we look at things like fertilizer, any kind of spray, any kind of supplement tub that you put out, mineral, all right? And all of these things are supposed to increase our profitability, right? Because they're going to increase production. This is
another piece of it is actually well-managed regenerative grazing can increase the productivity of a particular piece of land. So with the same cost.
He's way ahead of me, man. Way ahead of me. Way ahead of me. You're absolutely right. Yeah, this is, but you're absolutely right. It should theoretically. A lot of people see inputs. This is the low-hanging fruit, is inputs, right?
And we don't count labor as an expense, so
You-
that factors into the category.
Oh God, we really are going to be here all day, aren't we? I don't mind. Okay, a lot of these inputs, here's the thing. I'm not attacking any of these inputs. And it's really interesting. This is interesting timing because I don't know if anybody here is going, or I know some people are going. Next week is something called CattleCon, National Cattlemen's Beef Association. There will be about 15,000 people there, and there will be hundreds, if not thousands of booths selling stuff like this. Okay. And I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying we don't use some of this. I want to talk about the thought process behind it. Okay. So what do you think in livestock in general, production livestock, cow, calf, raising sheep, what is one of the most determining factors for profitability? What do you have to do in order to make money?
Have to have babies.
You got to get them bred. Yeah, you got to get them bred. So in your opinion, if we were to just remove all the stilts out from underneath our cows and our sheep, if we were just to turn them out and not do anything, all right, we're gonna open all the gates. Good luck. Domestic herds. What % of them do you think would get bred? No wrong answers again.
We use AI,
So none of them. That is such an honest answer. I appreciate you. Anybody else? What do you, just thoughts? 10%. Anyone higher?
I'll throw out 50/50.
You feel like 50%.
All our sheep would get bred early and they'd all lamb in February.
And then they'd all die.
By the most crooked-legged ram lamb.
Okay, so I would say just based off of some data, and this is cattle, so I'm not sure what it would be in sheep and goats, but just based off of actually some data of some wild herds and things like that. Can we live with 30%? Just domestic animals that are used to being, you're shaking your head. What do you think it would be? What do you think? I'm just curious.
No, I think 30 is probably about right. I'd say 30%. Can you live with 30%? Was your question? It's like, no.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, so 30%. Turn them all out. I'm regenerative now. I'm not doing any inputs. Fantastic. I've got 30% bred. Am I going to pay my bills? No. I'm also really ashamed to go down to the coffee shop and tell the guys that 30% of my cows got bred. So I got to do something about this. Okay, so what am I going to do? What are you going to do? You can add one input. You can't AI them. What are we going to do to get them bred? Up our conception rate. Huh? Fencing?
We're going to spend all our money on a new import bull or ram.
We're going to buy a lot of grain.
Okay, I'm a nutritionist. I'm a little biased. I'm going to feed them. Okay, I'm going to feed them. There's no wrong answers, but this is what I would do. I would just feed them. Okay, so here's the deal. So I'm going to feed them because I want to get 60% of them bred. That's a little less shameful. I can live with 60%. Okay, so that's fantastic. I got 30% more bread. But did I feed just those 30% to get them bred? No, who all did I feed? I fed all of them. Yeah, I fed the ones that already didn't need me, and I fed everybody who still didn't need me. Well, 60% still isn't doing it for me. Joe across the road is making fun of me. Okay, I need to do something else. I'm gonna add one more thing. This guy's telling me that if I add this input, I'm gonna get 15% more bread, and that's a pretty good deal. So what am I gonna add? Well, maybe I'm gonna feed them a little more. Okay, I'm gonna feed them maybe I don't have enough land. I need more forage. I'm gonna give them some hay. Okay, that's great. I got another 10%. But did I just feed the 10%? No, I fed everybody. I'm gonna throw some mineral in, get another 6%. Man, my conception rate's going up. This is really, really great. I can now go down to the coffee shop and say I've got 78% of my cows bred.
Now the ones that are getting bred in the first place are over conditioned. They're too fat.
Yeah, right. But Ben's got 80%, so I got to outdo him a little more. So now I'm gonna put out a tub that's gonna make more out of my forage, right, and get more bang for buck out of my forage. And now my repro guy is telling me that I'm not getting them bred because I don't have quite the right minerals. So now I'm gonna do an injectable mineral. And fantastic, I got 4% more bread, but did I have to just give it to 4%? Who did I have to give it to? This is the production paradigm that we live and breathe in. Because the marketing is really, really great, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. Yeah, you'll get more bread. Yeah, conception rate's going to go up. Yeah, absolutely. As conception rate goes up, you make more money, right?
You should.
You should, but you're having to shovel it into them. So in your mind's eye, do you think we made more money at 70% than we did at 87%? You don't think we made more money down there? You think you made more money up here with all the inputs? No, you think it's opposite, okay?
Money or margin?
The funny thing about this, and again, I'm a ruminant nutritionist, okay? So I would go out to people's places and I wrote management plans that if someone were to show me them today, I would be like, burn that, I never want to see it again, okay? I made these recommendations to people and I've had to sincerely apologize. The thing is but they're good cows. I don't want to take all this out from under them. They need it, they're good cows. Where were your good cows? Maybe these even, right? Like I'll give it there. Maybe they needed a little protein. Maybe those were your good cows. These aren't your good cows. Put a trailer under them and send them somewhere else, right? But this is the thought process, especially around these statistics, weaning weight and conception rate and all of these things that we associate with profitability. What are we actually associating it with?
Production.
production and profitability the same thing? Would anybody venture to guess that they are almost antagonistic? This is a quote that comes out of RFP. I'm not even sure who in RFP actually said this first, but they say it a lot. That knowing how to raise livestock, this guy knows how to raise livestock. He knows how to raise a bunch of them, right? More every year. It's not the same as knowing how to run a business that raises livestock. Knowing how to graze really well and be a good grazer, right? And be a good steward of the land is not the same thing as being able to run a business that is a good steward of the land. You got to do both. And you have to do them both very intentionally because they don't just really come hand in hand. Anybody who's been kind of down this journey of trying to marry these two, which one was harder for you to learn, the business piece or the grazing piece? Business piece. Colin, business piece. I'm seeing lots of heads nod. Why was it so hard? Boring, uncertainty. You're telling me that grazing is certain?
My land grant education left that part out.
Let's not bring the universities into it, okay? In the back, you were nodding your head.
I think that most people have a passion for it and they forget about it.
Ooh, most people have a passion for it and they forget about the business. So it's a way of life. It's a lifestyle, and it should be. We're passionate about it. That emotion, like we should hang on to that, right? That's why we're doing what we're doing. But what is the point if we're doing it for nothing? Yeah.
It's like it's not in, you don't see it right in front. You
Yeah.
don't see anything except when you look at the bank book ledger.
Yeah, or your banker calls you and you're blocking his number and
You see the number of cows, it's physical number of cows that we have out.
Yep.
You see how the land is doing. You don't see the bank book every day.
Yeah.
It's not tangible.
I think sometimes the numbers stuff, it's not exciting. Sometimes it has a little bit of shame attached to it. And sometimes it tells you the truth of the fact that we have to start doing things differently and we're emotionally attached to the way we do things right now. So we'd rather ignore that. And that's a very human thing. It's a very human thing. And I also just want to note that humans are wired for safety and familiarity, right? Like way back in caveman times, unfamiliarity, and that triggered something in your brain that this is not safe, right? You were wired for survival, and still today, when change comes at you, or you are faced with inevitable change, you have an aversion to it, a natural aversion to it, because your brain is saying, not safe, not safe, not safe. And so the fact that we haven't changed things, like I said, there's some shame attached to that, I think, sometimes, but being able to kind of recalibrate yourself and say, I know that where I'm at right now maybe isn't very safe. Let's step into something that is. Yeah.
So I think, and I'm not a farmer, so forgive me for this, but sometimes when I've worked with farmers, because I write grants for farmers and they're all family farms, you know, they're very good at farming, right?
Yep.
But just because your wider family has been farming doesn't mean your nephew's good at fixing the tractor or your wife is actually good at doing the books.
Yeah.
Like, farming is an expertise, and there are so many different separate expertises within it, and knowing what you need to like resource out and bring in that expertise.
Yeah.
I think it's challenging.
I think that's very valid. Troy?
I just, I got through holistic management stuff, so the business, you were talking about, you know, money and things, and I'm old enough now to start talking, and now my context is wealth generating.
Mm-hmm.
So the cash is part of the ledger, but also in wealth, there's wealth in the land that can be passed on to the next generation at an organic matter level of whatever.
Yep.
There's some wealth stuff that we kind of look at the checkbook is the cash, and I'm saying that's just a piece of the pie, because there's wealth that's generated. It's not maybe captured today.
It's not tangible.
Checkbook.
Yeah.
But those trees growing, or the riparian area that's sequestering the rainfall off the land, or any of these things is more, you're more resilient.
Yep.
In that wealth.
Yes.
Is because when the shit hits the fan, you just keep going.
There's the
So
resiliency
wealth
piece.
in there that's not cash counted in some of that gets a little bit dicey.
Does what Troy said resonate with a lot of y'all? Yeah, I'm seeing heads nod. So here's the thing. I agree with you 100%. He's talking about the resiliency that you build up from an ecological standpoint. I think we talk about that really well, though. We do a good job of talking about that and sharing that. And I'm sitting here like picking at the regenerative movement as someone who is like in the middle of it and just would die for it, right? I think we do a good job of talking about that. But then when we're trying to get people to understand this or to convert or to make another step into it, they go, yeah, that wealth in there is all good and well, but I have a note to make at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can't pay the mortgage, then
yeah,
your kids aren't going to inherit that wealth. It's going to be a housing wealth.
Exactly. Yep. So this I don't want to call it theoretical because it does exist, right? But this economic or non-tangible, non-cash value that we're generating is wonderful. But if we're hurting at the bank account, it doesn't matter because it's going to get broke up, subdivided, developed. Right.
But if we chase cash, we're not building wealth. That's the other part of.
You have to, it's a balance. It's the pot.
Right?
It's the pot. Right? Yeah. If we start chasing that finance leg, the cash leg, and it gets long, what happens to our pot? You're absolutely right. Yeah. So it's a pot. It's a balancing act. But the cash piece is the piece that I kind of want to like hone in on. I say cash piece. The economic and the finance piece is the part I want to hone in on. I'm about to get into that right now. Let me see what time it is. It's 45 minutes in. We've got an hour 15 to go. Do y'all need a break or are you good to go? Keep rolling? Okay, we'll keep rolling. All right. So how do we get to profit then? Because I'm talking about profit, money, cash. I think there's a lot of value in what you're talking about, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. It ties in. How do you achieve profit? And it's funny, I just was pulling up pictures to put in this slideshow, and this came up, and I was like, this proves my point. As costs go down, does profit go up? Not necessarily. I would agree with that. A lot of people associate it that way, right, though? That's, again, the attraction. Reduced inputs. We're going to make more money.
Well, I mean, if your costs go down, but your production stays the same.
There you go.
Yeah.
We're going to demonstrate that here in just a minute. Is profit achieved by increasing production? We just kind of agreed it wasn't, right? Production does not equal profitability. We all just agreed with that. What about diversifying enterprises? We get more enterprises. Are we going to make more money if we can run? He's shaking his head no. Are we speaking from experience? Yeah, I see that. What enterprises do you have? Can I just ask?
It's less now, but we used to have like the farm, and then I say the farm, we have a farm store,
Okay.
wholesale, CSA, and all that. Then we also used to have a catering company
Okay.
where we do farm table catered meals and everything else. That was not as good as Justin.
That was okay. That was not profitable. Okay, yeah. So I work with someone that his deal is you've got to diversify. You got to spread out. He's very risk averse. So he's like, you got to diversify your risk. You got to spread it out because if something happens in one enterprise, you got to have this other one. If you have 4 enterprises, are you going to have one that's the most profitable and one that's the least? I'll just leave that there. Right. Not saying there's a lot of value in stacking enterprises sometimes, right? A lot of value, but you're always going to have one that's the most profitable.
You're going to have that loss leader, though. You got to sell those eggs at a loss.
And we can talk about this more a little bit later too, when we get more into the livestock piece of it. Sometimes there are enterprises that balance each other out. But there's sometimes these are some paradigms we have around profit, right? The more production, this is how we ended up where we are, right? This is how we ended up with all of these stilts under the houses, right? And with all of these booths at NCBA and everyone's selling all this stuff and we're having to we're feeding 6 months out of the year, right? Because we need more. Anybody, if I don't know if y'all kind of, again, in small ruminants and sheep, it may be different. I'll say on the cow side, if anybody kind of conventionally ranching hears that you have less than like an 87% conception rate, you are a horrible manager. I'm not going to talk to you. You've got leprosy. It'll rub off on me, right? Some of the most profitable businesses I've seen run between 75 and 80% conception rate, right? So those two don't correlate. So anyways, we're going to get into this a little bit. This is, you're going to see graphs. Nobody zone out on me. This is why I asked if you needed a break, okay? So we're going to get into some graphs and talk about some of how this works. In Ranching for Profit, they teach their entire economic model is based on something they call the 3 secrets to profit. Okay, So I'll just kind of familiarize you with this. If you had an economics class in college, you'll recognize this. Fun fact, I was a pre-vet major. I took 8 chemistries and no business classes. So when I learned this stuff, it was the first time I saw it. And maybe that benefited me because I didn't have any paradigms I had to undo, right? Like this just made sense. So in any business, in ranches, in anything, any business, we've got, this happening. So our overhead costs, what does an economist call an overhead cost? A fixed cost, okay? Nothing's fixed. We can change anything. Everything's within our control. So we're going to call them overhead costs.
The cost that occurs whether you produce or not.
The cost that occurs whether you produce or not. Fantastic. Yes. Okay, so these costs in our businesses are primarily going to be land and labor. This is your land cost. This is your infrastructure. And with labor, it's going to be people and all of the stuff that comes with them. Okay, it's your salary. It's your manager's salary. It's workman's comp. It's vehicles. It's all the iron sitting out there in front of your barn, right? It's all the maintenance. That's going to be all of your overheads. Direct cost. What does an economist call direct cost? Operation. Variable costs. They're all variable. We can control all this. So we're gonna call them direct costs because these are the costs that are directly tied to production. You can also think of it a little loosely if you apply that thing directly to an animal. Go ahead.
I have a question about direct costs.
Yeah.
So like, for example, processing, you said they're all very, I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't have any say over how much they charge me to process.
You can go somewhere else.
Yeah, but they charge the same.
Or
Maybe.
more.
Maybe, yeah. So the direct costs, when I say they're variable, I mean, you could just sell your cattle at the sale barn and forget about the processing costs, right? There's different, you can position yourself differently. They're all variable. Everything's within our control, essentially. And we can talk about that a little bit more.
Well, the smaller costs, it's also, whatever the unit cost per animal is, it's a 1-to-1, the more animals you finish.
Exactly. So that's what we're getting at here. So with the direct cost, it's going to be as you add units of production, this cost goes up. I add one more cow, I have to process that animal, that cost goes up. Okay, I have 100 head, I had 125 head, and my feed cost goes up by that much. If I'm vaccinations would fit into this, right? Processing costs, preg checking, AI, all that kind of stuff, right? So these are direct costs that applies directly to an enterprise. So we have land and labor costs. Land and labor costs are steady, even as production goes up to a point. Right? We may scale enough that now we've got to go lease another property. Now we've got to add another unit of labor, something like that, right? We call that economy of scale. So our overhead costs are pretty stable, and then our direct costs go up as our units of production go up. Fair? As our units of production go up, hopefully, this gross products line, you can think of this as gross revenue. It's not quite the same, but that's probably what you're most familiar with. Gross product is the value of our production. Okay, it is the value that our production unit creates. So the best way to think about it, I know I'm trying to think of this in like sheep terms. I'm going to stumble over my words probably. So in cows, like cow-calf, most people would think that's the calf that you sell. But it's also the cull value of the cull cows that get sold every year too, right? It is the value that enterprise creates. Okay, so this is our gross product. This is, you can think of it as gross revenue. Yep.
Does the gross product include the heifer that you retain into the herd?
Absolutely, yes. And it's complicated, yeah, but yes, absolutely. Yeah, the value that she generated. So if she had a heifer and you kept her back, yep, she's absolutely added to the inventory, and that's value created. Yep, value created. So this is just value created, pretty simple. We're going to keep this in pretty simple terms. All right. Over here is profit. It's where we want to be. All right, some people call that leftovers. It's okay if you do. And then the big red dungeon of doom. Some people call this normal. Okay. Here's our break-even point. I like how Dallas always says we don't worry about break-even because we're not ranching to break-even. Okay, so we're going to be operating, ranching, farming, doing whatever we do to make a profit. So we want to be over here. So just looking at this graph, I'll tell you right now, there are 3 ways to increase profit. No matter what business you're in, whether you own this hotel, whether you have a dairy, whether you have a farm store, whether you have sheep, there's 3 ways to increase profit. And just looking at this graph, you can figure what they are. Reduce overheads is the first one that you always hear. That's an obvious one, right? So we have our overhead costs. If we just reduce our overheads and bring those down, you can see how those lines go down. We have a new break-even point. Profit gets bigger. Fair? Is it?
Prices.
We'll get there. I was gonna ask on the overhead costs. Is it pretty? How simple is it to reduce overhead costs? Shouldn't be a lot of head shakes. Land and labor. You got to fire your guy, pay yourself less, operate on less land. Sometimes you can sell off a bunch of equipment you're not using. A lot of people don't like to do that either. It's tough. Those are painful. It's the most obvious way to increase profit. It is the most painful way to increase profit, right? So sometimes there's some low-hanging fruit there, but it can be challenging.
It's also a lot of the simple to take on reduce overhead is to spend less, get rid of some of your equipment.
Yeah.
But if that means it increases your labor, you haven't actually changed it. You just switched it from one part overhead to something else.
Exactly. Yep. That's why we're looking at these lines all in, right? These are all going to move. I like how this is an interactive slide because we can see exactly what you're talking about. Another one is to increase turnover. Okay. So, we have our cows. She had a calf. Fantastic. Now what do we need? More of them, right? So as we increasing turnover, we can create more gross product. All right. So that would look like this. We just do more units, more profit. Pretty simple, right? Has this paradigm gotten us? Can it get you in a bind? We'll talk about that too. Okay, so what's the third one? We've got reduce overheads, increase turnover, which is, the gross product piece. Lower direct costs. That's we often think that. What could be a side effect of lowering direct costs? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna add another option.
What is it?
Increase efficiency.
Increase efficiency. What does that mean to you?
Do more or less.
Do more with less. Y'all agree with that? Ooh, I see head shakes. What do you think?
You could have a really inefficient system in place.
Yep. You could have an inefficient system. I see lots of wheels turning and nobody speaking.
Do more with less is our narrative.
Yeah.
I hate that.
You hate it. Why?
Do more with less? Yeah, no.
So
we're already doing more.
It's true. If we cut these direct costs, what does that potentially look like? So we lower our direct costs. Okay. What is often a side effect of cutting direct costs? I'm going to pull my stilts out from under these cows. I'm going to reduce feed. I'm going to vaccinate less. I'm going to do whatever, less of whatever. I'm going to get cheaper bulls, whatever it is. What could be an unintended consequence of this? Looking at the graph, what could happen?
The slope of the product line goes down.
It could. Yep. This happens a lot. This happened at Noble. I have the numbers to show you later today, and I will show those to you. We dealt with this, okay? Sometimes that can happen, and now your new break-even point is further over. You cannot starve a profit into a business. I'm not saying reducing inputs are bad. I'm not saying it's not a way to potentially generate more profit. I'm saying it's not a foolproof way to do it. Just saying cut direct costs is not enough, right? So if it's not cut direct costs, what is it?
Well, you can increase revenue.
You could increase revenue, increase production per cow.
Right.
Yeah, we could do that. How could you potentially increase production per cow? Better marketing, more pounds.
Well, Bitcoin versus doing commercial, doing it retail.
Okay.
Managing the actual product, the meat itself,
Yep.
and how it's prepared for the customer.
Okay.
Being able to get the value added that you put into that in the price of the meat, promoting the product.
You're a
way-
marketing genius, aren't you?
No.
I can tell. So marketing.
This is the marketing genius.
Yeah.
I just repeat.
So marketing is certainly a piece of that. Most of us, when we think of increasing this gross product line, we historically think more pounds, more animals, more pounds, right? We're going to do more. If we do it that way, increase that gross product line, increase production per cow, oftentimes it also will increase direct costs, right? So now this line goes up. And here's the funny thing about direct costs going up is a lot of the times, if you have to increase inputs, the inputting costs, which are overhead, which are people and the things it takes to do it, will also go up. So just, again, this is very simple, just looking at these graphs. We have all these paradigms in our head about what it looks like in the industry, but just looking at the graph, how these lines move, that's not the answer either. So what is it? Anybody know? Any thoughts? Okay.
I don't know how to put it in business terms.
Okay.
But what's coming to mind is like managing genetics.
Managing genetics. Okay, so that's probably production per cow. That's going to be you're trying to increase production. Yep. Managing genetics. There's something, we need a new term. All right. There's something called gross margin. Gross margin is the relationship between these two lines. Okay. Direct costs and gross product. Because that's where our profit lives, right? Dallas calls it the pizza wedge. We want the pizza wedge to get bigger. If we lower direct costs, even if gross product comes down just a little bit, we still might have more profit. I will let that animation go again to show you that. You lower direct costs, gross product may come down a little bit. Again, we experienced this at Noble, but our break-even point still moved and we had more ability to capitalize on profit. So it's not direct costs, it's not reducing costs, and it's not increasing production. It's the relationship between those two things. We call that gross margin, specifically gross margin per unit, okay, because we want to look at it on an animal basis. And what you were talking about, efficiency. This measures economic efficiency, yes.
Can you give an example of that? Like, what's an example that you've seen in the farms that you've worked on where someone has successfully lowered the direct costs at a small overhead?
Yeah, I'll show you, I'll tell you right now, but I'll show you these numbers. I have all the numbers for Noble through our transition, what that looked like. But we pulled all of our fertilizer, all of our spray, most of our vaccines. We give 3 vaccines. We used to give 8. Okay. We don't feed any hay anymore. We feed very little feed. We had a huge fallout on our cow side. Our cows are smaller. We sell less pounds of calf per cow and are more profitable. So our revenue number is smaller. Our profit's bigger. Revenue is not profit. Right? This is like that revenue line. This is gross product. This is all the cash that came in, right? Oh, my bank account looks great. Now I got to pay my guy. I got to pay the banker. I got to pay the feed salesman. I got to buy hay to get through the winter. And where's my profit? Right? We're focused on profit. We're going to be profitable. And sometimes that means less gross product, or it can. Yeah.
I think another example, so for sheep would be like parasite management. And so instead of like blanket worming everybody, you're saving the time by not, well, you're saving the money by not giving everybody wormer, and then you're saving your sheep by only giving the wormer to the sheep that need it. And you're hopefully building a more resilient flock, which are then going to weigh more. So when they come,
it's like if you give a mouse a cookie.
right.
Yeah. Just gets better and better. Colin, do you have an example of this? Have you guys experienced any gross margin?
We're just talking about that.
The first one that came to mind was just extending our grazing season, so our feed bill is longer.
Yep. But did your gross product go down?
Kind of bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a culling period.
A culling period. Yep.
So my example is I'm a custom grazer, so if I graze longer, even though I used to have a lot of animals on a land base. Now having less animals for longer period without feeding hay, a longer grazing season makes me more money. And it's, I don't know, and it makes more money because there's less labor in it.
You load your overheads. Yeah.
You know, you're not, if you're stockpiling and doing these types of things, then you're not, turning a wheel on the hay feeding like Noble.
Yep.
So that, yeah, they're like, oh, I don't. So in one case, that's a complete context problem.
It is.
In my context, it takes so many acres to do this per head, and others don't have that same context. So just me saying that, it's right for me, but nobody else.
Let me just comment on that really quick. What he said was right for me, it is not right for everybody else. Here's the beauty of this. This economic model works anywhere. The way that you make the pizza wedge bigger is not going to be the way Troy does it, or the way Colin does it, or the way I do it, right? The way, I don't care how you do it, right? There's a million ways to make this happen. And you may do it the opposite way that someone else in this room does it, right? But it doesn't matter because it's not their pizza wedge, it's yours. So we're going to focus on increasing the economic efficiency of our businesses. And what does that look like for us? And that's what this model allows you to figure out. Yeah.
Just another example of reducing gross product and increasing profit was when I was milking cows. We were feeding a lot of grain, and the grain salesman said, if you feed them more, you'll get more milk, so you'll make more money, right? I was in complete control of the situation, so I did an exercise where I showed my bosses and the people that were pulling the strings that if we cut grain, we would cut costs enough that it would more than make up for the decrease in the milk check.
Mm.
They chose not to do it because they wanted to impress somebody with numbers in the country folks, but it really opened my eyes to see that by intentionally reducing productivity per animal, milk shipped every other day, whatever metric you want, there was less stuff leaving the farm, we got more money.
Is that a hard concept for anyone to grab in this room? Is it hard?
It's a really good point that like so often, especially at conferences in your industry or because I also have a small construction business and it's the same sort of thing. Guys try to scale and they just want to chase revenue. And they will buy as many trucks as it takes to get their revenue up to add a zero or whatever. And now you were doing whatever revenue at 45 to 55% gross margin, and you wanted to scale it, and now you're at 25 and you have no net left. And it's the same exact dynamic, but it's revenue is not a metric of success.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I come from like a banking capital markets.
Oh, you think I'm crazy?
No, this is great. Well, the thing is, like, I do cost and profitability management projects.
Yeah.
I'm used to, and like, really happy or not happy to hear that like big banks like suck at this concept.
They
struggle with it. I think that the thing that I think they struggle with, and that like, we struggle with as operators, is that to make some of the strategic or operational decisions to start moving these lines around, you need to be collecting data at farm level and analyzing it. And like having that drive decision making. That's definitely one thing I struggle with. Is like, how do I collect the right data and put it in the right format to make the right decisions to move? So
that's a great comment for everyone online. There's a banker in the room, kind of. He said that the big banks suck at this concept at doing this. Yeah. Here's the thing about banks: the numbers that your banker wants to see can cash flow you into a hole. They care about cash flow, and you can cash flow yourself into an absolute hole. And a lot of people do that because bankers aren't looking at this. They would like this, right? But this is not what drives them. And so be cognizant of that. I was asking if the concept of producing less but making more, if that's hard. And when it's up here, you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's very, very difficult to go home and say, oh, I can cut my stocking rate by 20% and I'm going to make more money. That's difficult to convince dad to do. It's difficult to convince your wife to do. It's probably really difficult to convince your banker to do, right? Those are challenging things that you have to overcome.
I'm going to keep putting in the human part. So there's also profit as an old man in joy. So even if you're cash flowing and you're actually happier because you can come to a conference because you got a longer grazing season or whatever, there's profit in that. I'm convinced that, yes, there's more profit in the bank account, but there's also, we should be taking more profit as a human of.
Yeah. And again, so and you're not wrong. What I'm talking about is economic financial profit, right? Because the fact is, and just the sad fact is, a lot of businesses are not going to be operating in a year because of what's happening in the markets and in our economy and in inflation. You guys probably know somebody who is. There may be people in this room who are worried about your own place, right? And what you're saying is true, but I feel like, and this is maybe I'm being cynical, I feel like we've given too much credit to that sometimes and said, I'm willing to do this and I'm willing to bankrupt myself and my family because I love doing it. And I think there's danger in that too. The pot. You have to balance the people, support the people, right? It's the pot, but we gotta have the finances and the livestock and the land to support the people. I would love for you to.
To Troy's point on joy and happiness, as somebody who's on this journey of pushing these levers, the more you get this right, the easier Troy's part of joy gets.
Yeah. You mean if you make money, it makes you happy?
No, it just makes it easier.
It's not fun looking at the checkbook and not being able to pay your bills.
It's really not. Mental health crisis in agriculture, right? That's a whole other deal.
One of the biggest things that we're up against is basically social acceptance. We're trying to keep up with the Joneses in terms of you want to look at everybody else.
Yeah.
Real question is, how important is that to you?
What's that worth to you?
Right. Is it worth enough to you that you're actually going to bankrupt yourself on and be miserable, but you look great to everybody else?
Yeah.
Or you not care how you look to everybody else and you have everything that you need, you're happy?
Just want to refocus everybody back to the T. Okay? The T in your business. I have to pay this cost. I have to pay it, right? You have to pay it. Could your business, if that's what's breaking your business, first of all, is it what's breaking your business? And second of all, well, how can we restructure our business to do this differently? Right? These are the questions I think that sometimes we don't ask ourselves. Yes.
So that you don't look at it as something that may go towards cost, but it needs to be answered in a way that's building value and.
Yep, great question. This gentleman asked about capital in the business, so I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it today, right? I'm going to veer over and kind of talk more about the livestock, adapted livestock and grazing and the value of increased grazing. So I'm going to kind of veer back off that way. This is setting the stage. But if you're interested in that, I would encourage anybody in this room, if you're interested in anything that I'm talking about, Ranching for Profit, look into the school, Ranching for Profit. Again, we've partnered with Ranching for Profit because we found that no one in the business had the impact on ranchers' businesses the way that they did. And so Noble has some kind of bite-sized courses for Ranching for Profit. So we have a 2-day Noble Profitability course. We have a Business of Grazing course that dives into like how do you apply these things within your business. So if you're interested, I have a booth and come by, but Ranching for Profit founded this stuff. So if you're interested, it's a long school. It's a week-long school, and they dive into all of that. And I would highly recommend it. Unfortunately, I have 3.5 hours today, so.
Your Business of Grazing course, it's actually offered in Wyoming through Nat GLC.
Yep, we're all over the nation. There is going to be one in Wyoming. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's actually discounted for members.
Okay.
That one in particular actually is.
Great.
You offer it all over the country.
Yeah.
But yes.
Did you have something?
Yeah, maybe this is maybe I just can't understand it in the abstract. But why is the direct cost always starting at the same point as overhead? Why can't they be?
Because it's additive, right? Our overhead cost is our biggest cost. So our direct costs are now additive to that. So this is our dollars. We have to spend this much money here.
It's all relative to the overhead.
That's right. It's all relative to the overhead cost. And I will say, the reason why we reduce overheads is the number one secret. 60 to 80% of all businesses are overhead costs. Almost all. There are some, like if you're just getting into it and you're a custom grazer and all you have is a side-by-side and a trailer and you have leased land and leased animals, right? You have really, really, really low overheads. But most businesses, especially in farming and ranching, huge overhead businesses, especially like big cow-calf operations, like out where I'm at. So this is something that's really important to manage, but it is a huge part of your business. And so it's a big driving factor. So before I move on, I just want to make sure does everyone kind of get this? Is you kind of having any breakthroughs in your brain, kind of seeing this a little bit? Yeah.
I think one thing was that T is also land ownership, which I feel is a paradigm in farming.
Oh my God,
we all
yeah.
have to own our own land, and it has to be our own business that no one else has done before. That looks nothing like the thing we took over. I think that's a really big.
Oh man, is it ever?
I've definitely fallen into that trap. I don't think I avoided it, but
yeah,
I think that's one that I just feel is really difficult if you bought land in the last 10 years.
If you are
trying to buy land
If you're young and trying to get into this,
Yeah.
you don't have to own your own land. You don't have to own your own livestock. It's a really hard thing for people to get over, right? There are business models, lots of really successful ones on leased land, custom grazing animals, right? That's a super low overhead business. So people who think I can't get into ranching, it's impossible for young people to get into ranching, that's wrong. Yeah, paradigms. So, okay, I will move on from this, but I just want you guys to keep this in mind. This will be a theme as I kind of talk through the rest of the day, because when we're talking about, again, reducing inputs, this is the drive behind regenerative ag for the industry, from an industry perspective, right? And I don't know if you guys have been, I've been to them, if you've been to grazing talks or grazing schools, where people say profitable grazing. Anyone heard the term profitable grazing? Did you ask what the hell that meant? If you did they have an answer for you? It was maybe theoretical, right? Super valid in its intentions, probably with what you're talking about. There's this value in the resiliency in the soil. There is value in the grass. But we're not losing our businesses because of that. We're losing our businesses because we're going broke, right? So we got to take care of that piece. So how do we do both? Can we do both? Do you think it's easier or harder to synchronize those two? Because you hear about regenerative and you hear about profit. Do people talk about how they integrate, like really and truly? Do you think it's hard? Why don't people talk about it? I'm really curious about this.
It's a romance thing.
It's a romance thing?
You're creating all these positive externalities, like through your racing practices, that are very hard to capture.
They're hard to capture.
Your product.
Yeah.
The market doesn't always value that.
The market doesn't always value that product.
Has anyone come up with a way to like measure, categorize the investment that's put into soil, right? And then have that be able to reflect as like an asset in the business or wealth in the business?
They're working on that. The easiest way to answer that question, there's carbon credits. It's very controversial, right? That's one way people are trying to do it. We have research projects going on right now where we are trying to do that. So we are looking, it's a 5-year project, looking across 3 continents and like 11 states, looking at socioeconomic data, livestock data, grazing, water infiltration, carbon flux towers, all that, right? And we're trying to equate that. The thing is, it's going to be so variable from place to place. So it's not going to be an easy, like, here's the number. So you have to take care of your finances and your economics, and then you have to figure out, apply that value, how it is going to actually create value within your business. Because I mean, again, most places don't run on hopes and dreams. And I don't want to be the cynic in here that says all that is worthless. I'm a dreamer, okay? I promise I am. But I'm really tired of seeing people lose the business. Family ranches get split up, get urbanized, get developed out of working lands because we all had a hope and a dream and didn't actually work on the business to make it profitable, right? So that's what I would like to focus on. So I would just kind of keep this in mind as we move forward. Think about these 3 secrets and how they move in synchrony with each other, because this is how we're going to attack grazing. And this is how we are going to actually create profit in our businesses from a grazing perspective. All right, so I'll get into that. So the application principles that I kind of the takeaway principles from here that I like to talk about, the concern of scaling. There's a lot of people think I just got to get bigger. I just got to get bigger, right? I don't have enough animals. I need more animals in order to pay my banker. I just need to get bigger in order to be profitable. If your gross margin is in the negative and you add more animals, what do? You go broke faster. You're just digging a bigger hole faster, right? So let's make the business great before it becomes grand, right? Let's focus on doing what we do right now really, really well before we scale it, right? And sometimes that means taking a step back. Sometimes that means destocking. Sometimes that means cutting an enterprise, okay? Doing a little bit less. Sometimes it means that, but let's focus in on this and create the efficiency of our enterprises before we do more. I would say that's one of the number one mistakes. A lot of people, and again, it was well intended. Alan Savory came over and he talked a lot about how you can double your carrying capacity, double your stocking rate. Anyone heard that?
Oh, yeah.
That's what everybody heard. And they walked away from a grazing school and said, I can double. He told me, Alan Savory said, I can double my carrying capacity. What did they do? They went home, they doubled their stocking rate. What happened?
Wrecked.
They ran out of, they wrecked. They ran out of grass and went broke and said, this doesn't work. Right? So let's focus on where we're at right now and make that good, and then we can scale. Growing more feed does not inherently guarantee a better bottom line. Is that counterintuitive? Not really. I think for some people it is. It is for me, right? Just because you can grow more grass and reduce your inputs does not necessarily mean you're going to make more money. There's a lot of people, well, it should. It should. You've got to run your own numbers and pencil this out and make it work.
So we're talking about conversion.
Conversion. Feed conversion. Yes.
Conversion of the resource with one.
Yeah. This is coming from a ruminant nutritionist, a classically trained ruminant nutritionist. I think the best nutritionist is a good grazer. I would rather never have to put a mouth of feed into cows. Do we have to? Where I live? Yep. Where you live? Probably. Yep. Okay. The best thing you can do is create diversity and grow forage in your pasture. So I think that's the best thing you can do from a nutrition side for animals. And then I think the best ranch manager is a really good businessman. And a lot of people don't want to hear that because that's not why we're in it. I keep saying rancher up here, and this applies to all of you though, farmers, anyone who's in dairy, anyone who's in ag. Did we get into a business working with livestock because we love numbers and people and managing businesses? No. We got to do it if you want to keep doing what you love. Okay, let me see what time it is. Okay, here are a few numbers. Now, I'm gonna preface this a little bit. We transitioned at Noble in 2020. There were a lot of maps. I didn't include them on here. We've got 5 different properties. Again, 13,500 acres. Traditionally, it was all cow-calf, terminal value-added programs. Okay, we had 1,600 pound cows. We were shoveling feed into them. We were really, really proud of our weaning weights. Okay, we made this transition back to our roots in 2020. And we did something that everyone said we were crazy for doing, but we were interested in the outcome. And we're a research organization, so we did it for funsies, all right? But we cut all the inputs in there. So I'm not going to say we quit feeding cows, but we quit haying. We destocked really heavily. And we quit fertilizing and spraying, and that was a really big one because we have some native grassland. We have a lot of cropland. We hayed a lot of meadows. And we had a lot of monoculture Bermuda grass, and we cold turkeyed it. What do you think happened? Yeah, it went. You know that sound when Wile E. Coyote like jumps off of the cliff, and then there's like a big bang at the end. That's kind of what it sounded like. So just to orient you with this, so these are our direct costs. So those direct costs we were talking about, broken out: feed, seed, fertilizer, all that stuff, across 13,168 acres. In 2020, you can see what our costs were per acre divided out, and then you can see the percent change as we went through that transition. And you guys can just look at this and ask me questions about it if you want. This is, unfortunately, I don't have all the numbers to go with this. I wish I'd gotten them for 2024 and 2025. Rest assured that all these numbers, as far as we'll see revenue and profit and stuff, started trending back up. You want to know what it looks like going through a transition. This is the reality of what it looks like. You can see that our direct cost, I'm going to say, does this thing have there it is. I haven't been able to find it this whole time. Total yearly costs, all right? They did go down a little bit from 2020 into 2021 and 2022, but they didn't go down a whole lot. We bought, is it up here? Yeah, you can see if there wasn't much change. We bought a crap ton of hay because we knew we were going to lose forage production. Because we had been propping up an unsustainable amount of production with fertilizer and chemical. And so we were like, man, we are going to really lose forage. So we bought a lot of hay in preparation for that, and ended up not really needing a lot of it, honestly. The land kind of surprised us. From 2021, this is just anecdotal stuff, from 2021 to 2022. 2022 wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. We think there was some residual nitrogen still in the soil that still kind of helped prop that up a little bit, and our forage production wasn't that bad. 2023 was rough. Okay, on the native grassland ranches, it wasn't that bad. On the monoculture Bermuda grass that we chronically hayed and did fertilizer and chemical, yeah, it was straight maretail, ragweed, rough stuff. Yep.
So just for clarity, did you say that you guys stopped making hay?
Yep.
But then you bought in hay?
Yep.
Do you still buy in hay?
Yep. if we need it.
So the decision to stop making hay wasn't, we're not gonna feed them hay, we're not gonna.
So that's a great question. So we wanted to quit making hay because we wanted to quit mining the soil, right? So our focus is putting back into the soil and not taking from it. So we quit making hay because we wanted to build up the soil. But we had livestock we had to care for, and we knew our forage production was going to take a significant hit because at that point, for lack of a better word, we created a drug addict out of the soil. It needed these things to produce. We cold turkeyed it, it went into heavy withdrawals. Okay, it was trying to heal itself. And so we were like, we're going to get some hay, and our plan was to bale graze. And we did some of that. We did have to feed some hay, but we didn't have to feed nearly the amount we thought we did because when we pulled the stilts out from under the cows, how many cows do you think fell out? A significant number of them, right? So they selected themselves for our new management and our new environment, and we destocked and we were able to kind of keep rolling. We are not against feeding hay. We would rather not because we can grow it cheaper than we can go buy it and haul it in. That's a natural resource that we have. We can stockpile hay. We can take care of that resource and stock appropriately. And we'll talk about that in the next session a little bit. Our primary focus was taking care of the soil and taking care of our livestock.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, was the savings that you saw because you didn't have to you weren't worrying about all your own chemicals and tractors and equipment to make hay? You bought some in?
A lot of this, so we sold, and I'm not sure when that happened, what year it was, 2022, 2023 probably. We sold about $400,000 in equipment, haying equipment, fertilizing equipment. We sold all that equipment off. We weren't using it anymore. We were not spending the fuel and the time and the equipment maintenance to put out feed all the time. And we were not, doing all the vaccination and processing and feed. We weren't feeding nearly as much as we were. So that was a lot of it. We bought the hay and we still have it in barns, most of it. Yes.
In terms of hay, and Travis and Devlin, that I mentioned, but hay making is actually a separate enterprise from the livestock.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In terms of business,
yep,
they're two separate enterprises. Is the hay making profitable, or is the livestock profitable? Is the livestock actually supporting the hay making?
Yeah.
And that's a question. When you're talking profit and loss, that's something to think about. Consider. Probably most everybody in here sees it as the same thing.
Right.
And Travis and Devlin points out that they are not.
Yeah. Yeah. For us, our goal, our priority, our main focus was the soil, taking care of that and restoring that. And so we were pulling off all that disturbance, right? So we're not haying anymore. Yes.
Maybe I'm totally ignorant here, but your focus was rebuilding the soil, right? And this is kind of like a large focus, but you're buying hay from somewhere else that you're assuming it's the same treatment as you were treating your hay.
Right.
So it's kind of a net neutral.
Yeah. Of
like treatment to the land.
Yeah. We had cows that we had to feed, right? And so I'll buy hay off of someone else. And that's a good question. She's asking about kind of the moral ramifications of buying hay if you believe in regenerating the soil, right? So for us, that was a business decision that we made. Here's the thing about buying hay. I'm never going to shame anyone for doing it. I'm never going to tell them that there's ways that you can do that isn't just destroying the soil, right? There's lots of ways you can do that, at the end of the day, that's a decision that you have to make. But I would argue that it is your job to keep your business afloat. It is and you're not going to be able to take care of your acres if you can't do that. So that was our focus. Yes.
So on the same lines of that, could you have made this business decision to reduce the herd size so that we'll not have to purchase?
We did. Yeah, they just bought hay in anticipation of needing it if we needed it, right? And then we ended up getting into a drought and we had it and didn't have to buy it when everyone else did, so that worked out. Yeah, you don't have to, but we just did. That was just a business decision that they made. They had access to buy some, and they did. And we've used bale grazing on some like high bear spots to kind of help build soil there. So, yes.
Just want to note, I've seen the same thing. I took over various grassy fields from a large dairy that put a lot of liquid manure on it. The first year of production afterwards was great, and then it just crashed.
Yep.
Totally crashed.
Residual nitrogen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then those fields are really challenging because it seems good. They've been producing great for decades, and they look like a good field, and then nothing.
It's so interesting, and I don't have pictures in here. Maybe I can add them in between sessions. I can try and dig them up. That one ranch that is down, it's on Red River, down in the bottom of the Red River. It's pecan and Bermuda grass. And that place was where everyone said, they were like, man, this is going to take it the hardest. This is going to be so hard. And that ranch manager had been there for 25 years, managing everything in a very conventional way. He is our biggest advocate now because he watched what it went through, but that place is unrecognizable. You would not believe the amount of grass that's down there now. It's incredible because whenever he had all these big, tall, rank, gnarly weeds came up, he let them do their thing. They were serving a purpose. They were doing something in the soil. And it's incredible because we've got lots of pictures because now pastures that had sunflowers and ragweed and mare's tail and stuff in them, he would just graze them and leave them, graze them and leave them. And the pastures that would look that way one year, the next year, all those weeds would be gone. That stuff serves a purpose. And so it took time. And again, it says after this is during the transition. This is when we transitioned. 2021 is when we pulled everything out from underneath of it. So yes.
You were talking about how a lot of your cows kind of, the ones that could handle this transition, you know, you have to run. Have you noticed that they're better at pallating the native grasses?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about livestock adaptability this afternoon, but I would say she's asking if they select better and graze better, the animals that survived and went through it. It's a learned behavior. For us, it was not inherent in the animals that we had. The ones that had lower maintenance requirements were the ones that probably were able to go through and persevere. But now the grazing in the animals now compared to 5 years ago, yeah, it's night and day difference. I make the analogy that it's the same as, anyone here ever traveled abroad, been anywhere foreign? Weird food, you don't know what it is, can't read the menu, you don't even know if it's meat, right? Okay. If you ever do that and you're just like, man, like I would really go for a Big Mac right now or a Pop-Tart because I know what that is. It's familiar. It's not good, but it's familiar. I know what it is. We're wired for familiarity. Cows are the same way, right? They've never seen a weed before because you've been spraying them out for 10 years and then you get mad they're not going to eat it, right? But once they try it, they go, oh, that's not so bad. And then maybe they start craving it. They're the same way. It's all behavior driven. Yeah. Yes.
Point where you know now from a financial perspective exactly how many head that amount of acres supports.
Yes.
Create the maximum amount of profit.
Yeah. So the question is, are we at the point now where we know how many animals our land will support to maximize profit? And we are pretty close there. Yeah. The thing is, and y'all are getting ahead of me. I'm going to talk about carrying capacity this afternoon in the next session, and kind of how to figure that and what that looks like. It's different every year. It changes every year, and we have to be flexible. We have cows. We've got stockers. We sell by stockers. We've got goats. We've got sheep. So we have a lot going on, and so we have a lot of ability to mobilize and move animals in and out depending on what happens with forage production. We have a pretty good idea, but it changes year to year. It's never the same. Yes.
And what you're seeing initially, before you went through this transition in 2020, everything was artificially supported at a much higher level. You pulled the legs out from under it. You knew it was going to crash, and it did crash.
Yeah.
What's happened, it's came back and is now operating at a sustainable level with a lot less input.
Yeah.
And it's going to be much, much more resilient. That's what's happened.
Yeah. It's been really good. I will say we probably have time for me to tell stories, right? I just want to bring it back before we kind of end this session. I do want to bring it back to the pot, right? So when Noble decided to make this transition, I was there. I'm not sure if anyone, Troy, I know you know him, but Jeff Goodwin, I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with him. Okay. He was there, and there was a ranch manager there named Clark. And we decided there was a ranch there that had been deferred for 15 plus years, had not been grazed because it was down in the breaks on the Red River. It was rough country. It was really rough country. And everyone was like, you turn cows out there, you're never going to get them back. I mean, you can't walk through some of that stuff. And it was about 3,500 acres. There was Bermuda grass up front. They grazed with bulls and stuff. And the rest of it was wildlife. They hunted it and stuff, but they didn't graze it. And so we decided we were going to go in and stock that and be the heroes and show everyone how to be regenerative. And so we sourced the kind of animal we wanted, right? We focused on genetics. We wanted young animals. We found these 3-year-old bred back red heifers, and they were genetics that they had come from an operation that had the same kind of genetics we wanted. Fantastic. Great. And we were going to put them out. What could go wrong? Okay. Cautionary tale. So we went and picked up these heifers. They were grazing wheat pasture and eating a 4-way ration out of a truck. Okay. The genetics we wanted, maybe not being managed where they were at how we wanted. We picked them up in November. and turned him out on this rank native pasture that had not been grazed in 15 years. And we were going to show everyone how we didn't have to feed cows. Okay. I'm laughing at myself now, but it seemed very logical to us at the time, right? We're going to turn them out. We're going to make them hustle. What falls out next year, that's fine. We'll get rid of them. We're going to roll. So here's the other thing. There's the people part of this, right? I'm about to insert that in there. I was kind of the nutritionist managing that. The manager was a new ranch manager. He had never managed a place before. He'd been on ranches. He was working on another ranch. He was managing this place newly. I went out and told him, I was like, okay, we're going to buy these. I can't remember if they were like 30% cubes or something. And I need you to feed them, 2 pounds a head a day, whatever it was, because I knew that they needed some feed. The forage out there was not good. They needed some protein. And I told him that. And then I started getting calls like 6 weeks later because they were right on the highway. People were like, man, these cows look bad. Like, they're not looking very good. And I was like, oh, you're used to fat cows. Like, they're fine. They're fine. What I told him was 2 pounds a head a day. As a nutritionist, what did I mean? 2 pounds a head a day, if you're feeding them 3 times a week, 2 times 7 is 14. Divide it by 3, however many pounds that is, right? What did he hear? Every time I drive out there with the feed truck, dropping 2 pounds a head. He was feeding twice a week. Okay. Communication issue. Is that his fault or is it my fault? Right? There's a people part of this aspect. There's the livestock part of this aspect. We put them out on really rank country in November when they were set to calve in February. Didn't give them the correct nutrition. They had calves. What do you think our breed back was that next year? 30%, 10%. Come on, it wasn't that bad.
Less than you wanted.
Yeah, it was 63%. Okay. Talking to a lot of people since then, they're like, yeah, I'd expect that. I'd expect that. And there were some people who say I would have done the same thing because the ones you didn't want fell out and you can charge forward and move on. Can most people stomach the cost of investing in 150 head of heifers and having to sell off 40% of them the next year? Most people can't stomach that, right? We could, most people cannot. So when people ask me about cold turkeying this stuff and pulling inputs out and really making them hustle, this economic piece comes into it. The animals that fell out would have fallen out over the next 3 years. I believe that, and I've seen that time and time again, right? But they fell out all at once because of communication issues, because we did not know, well, we did know, we weren't paying attention to livestock needs at the time of year as opposed to our ecological goals. That's what this next session will be about, balancing ecological goals with livestock needs, because as stewards, that's important. You had your hand up back here.
Yeah, so if all you've got available is that range land and you start small, would you be better off to like bale graze some of those?
Yeah, great question. He was asking if we'd be better off to bale graze. They just needed the protein that they weren't getting because of a communication issue. I think that would have solved a lot of it. But we probably should have bale grazed because they didn't know how to graze. Those heifers did not know how to graze. There was lots of grass out there, tons of grass. Really dry, poor nutrition, needed protein to metabolize it, didn't know how to graze. So, I mean, here's the deal. We went wrong in a minute. I like to tell this story because it's a big, big screw up in a lot of ways. You're probably thinking this girl doesn't know what she's doing, right? Like that was a dumb move. But it's just, there's so many different points where you can go wrong. We went wrong in almost all of them, but it's a really cool story. And to see what happened with that herd after was really interesting. To follow those females out and see what they did after the fact was really interesting. So, yes.
Back to what you started with at the beginning, principles and concepts.
Yeah.
Were rock solid all the way around.
Yeah. Our application sucked.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have like the annual revenue and the
You want that?
margin?
Yep.
The result of
Yeah.
that?
So
'Cause that's what I'm like, were you guys operating at a net loss for 2 years and then you found a profit?
Oh, we
Or
came
did you
into this deal.
remain profitable?
We came into this deal at a net loss, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we came into this deal at a net loss. We were hemorrhaging money. I see people taking pictures of this. Don't hold this against me, okay? He's gonna use these numbers against me and be like, this girl's losing money and she showed everybody. Yeah, so you guys can take a look at these numbers. This is total operating expenses. That's overhead and direct costs. Okay, so this is how we used to keep numbers. We didn't divvy stuff out. Started doing stuff the ranching for profit way. But if we want to compare numbers pre versus now, we got to do it this way. So this is not the ranching for profit economic model because we didn't separate our costs out the way we should have at that time. And so you can take a look at this. And keep in mind again, this was probably the worst part of the transition. Is this 2023? This was the worst part of it for us.
That was the destocking.
That was just the fallout, lack of production. goats after this as well. So we were just figuring stuff out and getting our feet under us. Yes.
This is also reflective of what.
Ooh, good question. He's asking if this is reflective of the landscape at the time with the lockdowns and COVID and stuff, and not necessarily. I don't think so. As far as it affected the markets, maybe a little bit, right? But the thing to keep in mind with these costs, this is total operating expenses. This is overheads. This can be. It's hard to look at the numbers this way. I told you overheads are the biggest part of any business, especially at Noble, because we are not just ranches. We are also a research organization. We host researchers. We have a board of directors that we answer to. They like things to look a certain way sometimes on the headquarters and stuff like that. So we've got certain things that we do. We use demonstration facilities for our education. So there's overheads we have that no logical ranch would have. And so we have to find a way to deal with that. That's what gross margin does for us, is really helps us to hone in on our enterprise and say, we've got all these overheads that all of the institute carries and not just the ranches. So I would just keep that in mind. But yeah, we were operating at a massive loss at the peak of our revenue. Production does not equal profitability.
Yeah, you dropped 800K in revenue, but you dropped $1 million in expenses.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a totally different business.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, it's interesting to see here. These total operating expenses went from 2022 to 2023. Again, we bought all that hay and did some other things in here. And here is when we really leaned up that operation. And from there, we've expanded some enterprises. But so we have our own sheep. We run a lot of goats. We lease out to a guy who grazes us with goats. That's what he does. So he can come in and the goats can be his problem and not ours, which is the best kind of goat to have. That's been a whole other experience.
The only good goat is one turning slowly on a spit.
You know, man, it's so interesting though. I was gonna say, well, we can break here in a minute, give everyone a little bit of a chance. But we have cow guys in my part of the world. It's so funny. I had a couple people come by the booth and see all of our like handouts, and they all got cows on them. And she's like, "You're not from here." I was like, "You're right. I'm not." She's like, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oklahoma." And she said, "That explains it." And so I was like, "All right, that's fair."
The story you just told is an interesting one, showing that really the cold turkey change is not actually the efficient way to do this.
Yep.
Actually transitioning both the animals and the people is, I mean,
the whole pot, right? Your money you have to be able to absorb costs. Your people have to adapt. Your land has to adapt, and your livestock has to adapt.
Doing it a little bit at a time, and sort of. We had the experience one year. We bought a bunch of individual dairy cows from the auction to build a herd up, and you know, it was funny. They were very different. It's like we put them all together in a pen, started feeding them something, and some of them were used to absolute crap and didn't eat the good hay, and some of them didn't. And some of them didn't know how to graze at all. Never grazed ever. They didn't know anything. It wasn't corn silage. It wasn't food. They would eat it, and you know, it was really quite remarkable that there was a multi-week transition where they all kind of learned from each other and got used to the new system, and eventually they all did pretty well. But if we had just like taken them all and thrown them right out in the pasture, some of the fattest ones would die.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And the people, it's like, you gotta learn the new system and figure out how, and it takes, the transition is multi-year.
Oh.
I mean, it took our farm, it took us, I mean, we've been there 11 years, and, you know, the first 5 years, things were noticeably changing every year.
Yeah.
And it hasn't stopped, but it's, these things take time.
They do. Yeah, we didn't screw all this up in a year. We're not going to fix it in a year. Ultimately, right?
I mean, I love the story of sort of responsibility to tell the story. And then as somebody that's been, you know, in the business for a long, long time, like, I feel like some of the decision making, if you called some really old ranchers that knew that context pretty well and leaned on that for mentorship, I'm pretty sure we would have said, now, I know your enthusiasm, and maybe you should not go so hard, because some of that stuff comes from top down.
Yep.
And some of that hurt could have been avoided by bottom up.
Does that ever happen? You know what we had on our team? Youth and exuberance. That's what we had. We had we were excited, right? And-
Finding the right
But what's
combination of that mentoring.
Well, we had a pretty good mentor. I would argue
I
that
know,
Jeff's a really
Jeff's
good mentor.
great.
Here's
But
what went wrong. The main part, what's the fulcrum in there? Was the communication. I own that. That was me. Okay, so I can blame Clark. He wasn't putting out enough feed. He put out what I told him to put out. That's such a small thing. That's such a small thing. I sent him a text, put out this much feed, thought he was going to do it, right? So that communication piece, the people piece, is a big, big part of that, right? That's where it all went wrong. But their learning outcomes after that were really, really cool. They were really cool. The way that those animals that stayed through grazed, the question about that, the way that they grazed, the ones that made it through, was awesome. And we had very little. We had an incredible conception rate that next year.
It's actually more, for a lot of us, it's more advantageous for you to tell us what things that went awry that you learned from than to cast some greenwashing like, oh, it's so great. And no, we'd rather hear the real side of it.
Well, it's a good thing I'm good at being self-deprecating then. Just some more numbers on here to look at. Again, that profit loss, you have an idea of the ratio of the overheads. This is just an idea. I mean, we have incredible overheads. There was a research facility put in there in 2017 that is like a $2.5 million processing facility. It's insane, right? And we have to service that overhead because it exists there. We're not just going to go rip out a $2 million like processing facility. When I say processing, I mean, just like a set of pens, and there was research plots there. And so that is infrastructure that exists that we now have to service, right? So some of y'all are that way. You might be stepping into an operational organization that has big overheads that you have to service. Some of those you can get rid of, some you can't. And some of this other stuff, the overhead labor, we're working on divvying this out because we have way more ranch hands than anybody who just had a ranch would have, because they have a lot of other responsibilities in research and things like that. So some of this is not quite accurate. So we really like to look at this gross margin and total overheads. So pay attention to that gross margin. Again, our overheads are astronomical. They're a lot better now. We've parsed those out a little bit better. Now, there's something called the gross margin ratio, and that's where you take your gross margin divided by your gross product. And we have a benchmark number there of 70%. And so we're doing really well on gross margin, right? Overheads absolutely kill us. That happens in a lot of businesses. So, and I honestly don't know what these numbers were necessarily for, so we'll overlook those. But gross margin is a really powerful tool to understand where you need to stop the bleeding. Is it actually within my enterprise? Is it in overheads? If you know it's in overheads, we obviously know it's in overheads, then you can attack your overheads, and that's pretty simple. You can go in there and see where your biggest overheads are at and where you can cut on those. If your gross margin's not doing very good, it can be in two places, right? Think of the graph. Your direct costs or your gross product. You can market better, you can get more value for your product, you can sell a different product, or you can attack your costs. But it's not just costs. It's the other piece of it too. So it really is a great tool to kind of help you understand where to attack this stuff at.
Can you explain, just, am I understanding this correctly, that those numbers represent dollar amounts?
Yes.
And that, like the first one, our ranch has overheads that are nearly double its annual.
That's the place that has that $2.5 million research facility that was put in, right? And so we have to figure in, you got to figure in your infrastructure, right? And what it costs to keep that up and the value of that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So
and there was,
are these like research ranches?
We do research on them as well. Yeah. As well as, and again, that's something we're working through, is parsing out those costs, right? Some things we have to do for the sake of the fact that we have a research project ongoing there that we have to service. And part of Red River having such, astronomical overheads, and this doesn't say what year this was, does it? I'm not sure what year this was. Red River Ranch is the one where we did all the haying. That's the ranch I'm talking about. That was monoculture Bermuda grass, had all of the equipment, and I think they still had all their haying equipment and stuff there at that time. They've got a lot of barns. There's a lot of equipment down there. They also have pecan orchards, and so there's a ton of pecan equipment down there. Very equipment heavy ranch.
Research Institute is analogous to an off-farm income.
We don't make any money from
it. It's holding up the, like,
oh,
like you're losing $200K a year in actual money. Like no farm would ever be able to maintain.
100%. Yeah, it was that way. Again, these numbers at the best are from 2023. So now the ranches, and that's been a process for us. We're running the ranches, they're a business. They're gonna stand on their own 2 feet. We do that now, right? This is what it looked like. This is what it looked like through the transition.
They're not getting the cash injection.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. They can stand on their own 2 feet now, with the exception of, and some of these overheads too. And this is something that we don't have to dig into too much. Not all those are cash costs. Some of those are some economic costs, right? The value, like that infrastructure is already in there. We don't have to pay for it, but there's a value there that we have to account for.
What's the ratio on the bottom?
The gross margin ratio, that's gross margin divided by gross product, right? So that is the money left over to service overhead. So that is gross product. Gross margin is gross product minus direct costs. Okay, so that is the money left over to service our overheads. That's the economic efficiency of the enterprise. And this is total value created by an enterprise. So it's total value and then the number minus direct costs. And that just gives you a ratio that we use to kind of benchmark ourselves and see if the problem is in our, if this number was 42%, we're like, ooh, we have too many direct costs in comparison to our gross product. We're going to dig in there. That's a red flag for us that we're going to look there. So that's the cool thing about this is really quickly, we can look at this and say, I know where my problem's at. Yeah.
Do you do your balance sheet?
Yes, we do. Yeah, I'm not going to show it to you. I don't have it here, but yes, it's very extensive.
I was just curious because again, to understand some of those numbers, you really need the balance sheet to determine where the debits and credits went.
Yep. This is a quick and dirty way to look at it and kind of know where my issue is. And then you can dig on the balance sheet and go, okay, now where's the actual, like this gives you where to look. And then you got to go dig around and find the actual issue, right? Yep. This puts a glaring red, red flag up for anything that's an issue. So it makes it pretty easy to assess those deals. And just so you know, if y'all were looking at overheads on this Oswalt Ranch and Coffee Ranch, those are two, this has a huge facility on it as well. This is our lowest overhead. I say lowest overhead. This is a really small facility. But Coffee Ranch, that's the one that we were playing around at. The reason why its overheads are fairly high, we had to mulch and doze and do a ton of work because that place had been so overgrown for so long. It took a lot of work management to bring it back to the savanna it's supposed to be. And so because we let it go for so long, we had to. So anyway, it's just some context around some of those numbers and what that kind of looks like. So I'll just leave this here. This is a Jeff Goodmanism, principles over practices, right? We're going to focus on those principles. How we apply them is going to be within your context. So I like to kind of just, carry that through, say adaptive management over systems. If anyone's trying to sell you a grazing system, I'd be very cautious, very careful of that because grazing changes year to year. Mother Nature changes year to year. Everything changes year to year. You have to as well if you're going to be in sync. I would say observation over habit. That's a hard one. You just got to go look and pay attention instead of doing stuff. Well, I'm going to put them out here because that's what I did last year and it worked. Right? That pasture may not look the way it did last year. So pay attention to some of that stuff. And then practicality over paradigms. There's a lot of stuff we do that is not logical, but it's because what we're used to doing, what we think we should be doing. Calving in January and having to warm up calves in the cab of our truck every year, right? Is one of those things. So I would just encourage you guys to think through that stuff. I was going to say, cool. I've got just like 8 or 9 minutes if people want to discuss. And I'll pick up in the next session. If y'all are going to be here, great. If not, thank you for hanging out with me. And in the next session, we'll carry this through and talk more about carrying capacity and livestock adaptability and that kind of stuff. So if y'all have any more discussion, I'll be here.